Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Gabrielle Martin, Tēnā koutou. It's a pleasure to have you with us for another episode of Open Your Eyes to the Universe. If you're joining our program for the first time, let me tell you just a little bit about what we do here. Youniverse is a series of contemporary talks, conversations, open-eyed meditations and interviews with people who inspire and uplift others simply by sharing their wisdom, their insights and experiences, and in doing so, co-create a better world. As we begin, the Youniverse team would like to acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional custodians of the land upon which we meet. So together we pay our respects to the elders of the past, the present and the future, and acknowledge their spiritual connection to country. And we also acknowledge and respect the wise elder within us all and the collective wisdom of all of those here this evening. Tonight on Youniverse, we're in the company of two Australian men exploring the art of listening. Now, does that sound like an oxymoron to you? Is listening truly a gendered art that women do more so better than men or not? Well, that's just one of the topics we're going to be exploring tonight with our two special guests, Alex Pertot, a retired counsellor and trainer, and Joseph Jarczewski, a multi-talented tradie. The quality of our listening can make a profound difference in any conversation. And I heard it mentioned recently, and I think this won't surprise you, that when people are assessing the realness or the authenticity of what someone is saying, their opinion is formed on 55% of the speaker's facial expressions, 38% on the tone of their voice, and only 7% on their words. So there's a lot more to listening than hearing words. Deep sacred listening is an art and a spiritual practice. It has the capacity to transform our relationships. It nurtures our inner voice and it inspires our spiritual growth. I'm mindful of Kay Lindhall, who's a certified listening professional and the founder of the Listening Centre. And she speaks of sacred listening, the art of becoming a listening presence, someone who can truly hear what the other is saying. To become that presence takes practice, not only to listen to others, but also to listen to ourselves and to listen to the divine. So Alex and Joseph will be exploring deep listening as a sacred art and a spiritual practice, and how they use this practice in their everyday lives. As always, viewers, we really welcome your participation and your questions. Thanks to those who've sent them in already. We've got them. If you'd like to ask a question as we move along, just pop it into the chat box and we'll get it that way. So Alex and Joseph, it's a pleasure to have you both with us tonight. Thanks for taking some time out on this chilly winter's night to join us. A very warm welcome to you both.
So thank you, Gabrielle.
Hello there,
yes,
and thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you both. Lovely. And I can see the beautiful red warmth of your background. A good colour in the middle of winter, yeah?
Yeah.
Look, viewers, let me tell you a little bit more about our first speaker. I've asked Alex to speak first. And as I mentioned, he's been a counsellor and a trainer with Lifeline Sydney and Sutherland. For those of you who don't know, Lifeline offers crisis support via telephone, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It answers more than 40,000 calls each year. Now, Alex has recently retired after 17 years as a counsellor and a trainer with Lifeline. A demanding role, but one that Alex carried out with a great sense of deep peace and deep listening. I know Alex is a caring grandfather and that he's been meditating for about 35 years. So Alex, tell us about your understanding of the transformative power of deep listening and how you've used it throughout your personal life and your career.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Gabrielle. So with Lifeline, it's something that we learned from the very beginning, how to listen effectively to the feelings of others. So with this little talk, I'd just like to explore what it actually means to listen to someone, and what are some of the more useful skills to have to be able to listen effectively. I think to listen effectively, we need a certain degree of empathy. Empathy, that is to be with someone without judgment, to allow them to express their point of view. To step into the world of someone and to walk beside them for a while, exploring both their worlds, their inner world and their outer world, without bias, putting my own thoughts and ideas to one side, and also creating a safe space for them to speak. Yeah, so it also involves being totally present for that person, being totally there for them. Listening also entails a degree of compassion and a desire to care for and to help another soul, another human being. At the same time, I need to be cautious to not become so completely overwhelmed and lost in their story. Also, it's important to have boundaries in place. Yeah, so boundaries may not always be the same. On one particular day, I might be feeling empowered, and my capacity to get involved in the upheaval and distress of another may be quite broad. I may be feeling stronger, and it may seem easy to spend some time exploring and what is happening for that person. However, on other days, I might be feeling a bit more vulnerable. So my boundaries need to be pulled in a little bit tighter. And when listening to another, I also need to be mindful of myself and understand where my boundary sits in any particular time. If I'm feeling stronger, I can push my boundary out. If I'm feeling a bit more vulnerable, I need to protect myself, particularly from a heavy conversation. It's also important to create a safe space where trust is created. And this allows the other to share on a deeper level. So yes, empathy, that beautiful, wonderful energy that wants to help another, and in a way that they can feel that they are not alone, that there is someone there who cares and is prepared to be with them, and for a little while to be part of what is going on for them at that time. So as I listen, I do not pay too much attention to the detail of the person's story or what has happened to them, but rather to look for the underlying feelings and emotions that they may be experiencing at that moment. In a way, it's a kind of reading between the words that they are saying. If I'm able to give a name to the feeling, to the emotion that the person is going through, then that can be a very powerful tool. The person feels like they have been acknowledged and heard. They feel like they have been able to share their burden, their pain, their suffering and distress with another. And that can have an effect of leaving them feeling relieved, feeling lighter, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from their mind and shoulders. It can also be a way for them to regain some clarity of mind. Quite often people who are feeling so overwhelmed by their distress, their emotions, fears and worries, that they have lost the ability to think clearly. When they feel that they have been truly heard, that clarity, that normality of their thinking returns to some degree, and then they are able to continue with their day. So with Lifeline, some of the issues that callers ring Lifeline about are quite often around feelings of loneliness, feelings of having been marginalized, feelings of grief, loss of loved ones. Sometimes life, a loss of identity, particularly during the COVID period. Many people have lost their jobs, and some of those people have overly identified with the work that they do. And so once the job has gone, they find themselves floundering. Many people also experiencing financial stress. When listening to another's story, it's important that whatever is being shared remains confidential, that is just between the two of us. However, there are some exceptions to that. If anything comes up during the conversation, during the call, where there is some indication that there is a risk of self-harm, a risk of suicide or child protection issues, or that they intend to harm another, then these are the exceptions to confidentiality. We need to protect life at all cost. So Lifeline can be said that it's an amazing listening organization. All the volunteers are trained in the art of listening to others who need help and support, to support them through some of their darkest moments in their lives. There are many people who call Lifeline on a regular basis. They have had the experience of previously speaking to a Lifeline crisis supporter. And out of that, they got that strong feeling of being heard and the feeling of being connected to another human being, even if it's just for a little while. The average call length of a call to Lifeline is about 20 minutes. And for the majority of the callers, by the time that they have come to the end of the call, they feel like they have shared. They feel like that some heaviness has been lifted. Mostly they take with them not so much what was said during the conversation, but what they do remember is how they felt by the end of the call. And it can be also a very satisfying and rewarding experience for the person who is listening. In many cases, they notice the change somewhere during the call, maybe whether it be halfway through the call, 3/4 of the way through the call. There is a distinct change to the person's tone. So quite often they begin to speak a bit more slowly and softly. Their thoughts become a little bit more connected and relevant, and they appear to they come into a calmer state of mind. This is what is remembered, and I think that this is the reason that there are so many callers that call back over again and again. They've had the experience and they remembered the feeling that they were left with. However, further down the track, when the anxieties, the fears and the worries return, they remember that experience, and they don't hesitate to call Lifeline back, which is a good thing. Something that is not so helpful during the listening process, and that is to be directive. To be directive, to be judgmental, or to offer them advice. So we never tell people what they should do. Even though the solution to their problem may seem obvious, it's much more empowering for them to come up with their own solutions. Listening is such a vital tool in helping others. Whenever people are feeling overwhelmed and distressed, listening allows them to feel connected and heard. It provides for them an opportunity to express how they are feeling. So, as it had been said previously, listening involves noting down how a person is feeling at that moment and reflecting those feelings back to them. Also, it's important to be mindful of any thoughts of self-harm or suicide that the person may be contemplating. When someone says something like, I just can't go on anymore, I just can't keep this up, that is a great opening to just ask them directly, firsthand, are you having thoughts of ending your life? Quite often the person will tell you straight out, yes, I've come to such a point in my life where suicide has been on my mind quite a bit. So in that case, it's very important to unpack what is happening for that person and to determine what it actually looks like and how great is the level to the risk of that person taking their own life. So, and in Australia, there are 40 Lifeline centres nationally, and 4,500 volunteers that listen to 1.25 million calls each year. And at Lifeline Sydney and Sutherland, being one of those 40 centres, we took about 40,000 calls that are answered annually. About 20% of those 40,000 calls are suicide related to some degree. People calling having suicidal ideology. But the majority of those calls, the person ringing has had the opportunity to share and tell their story. And in most cases, by the end of the call, they feel that they are in a much better place mentally, that they are in a safer place. And the risk of them taking their lives anytime soon is quite low. However, for about 10% of those suicidal callers, the degree of risk is somewhat higher. And so an assessment is made, and together with the supervisor, quite often a decision is made to have the emergency intervention initiated. And that means getting the person to reveal their identity, their address, and the police and ambulance go around to do a welfare check. Sometimes people are reluctant to give their identity or address. And so Lifeline has the capacity to be able to trace their call. And even if the caller is not at home, even if they're in the bush somewhere, there is the ability to find them fairly quickly. So when listening to others, it's also important to be able to listen to myself, to listen to how I'm feeling, to listen to how I'm traveling. Has my mood changed? Have I been affected by what has been revealed to me during the conversation? It's so important to have that awareness that I have, if I have been affected by a call in some way. As mentioned earlier, boundaries are an effective tool in terms of self-protection and self-care. And by having a connection with the divine in the background, definitely that calmness, that peace spreads to the other person and helps them to feel that it's a safe environment in which they can share their story. After the conversation has ended, I need to have the capacity to let go of that caller, to let go of any of the residue emotions that I had experienced during the call. So in most cases, during an interaction, I will not know what has happened to the caller, particularly those suicidal callers where an emergency intervention had been initiated. So having that ability to let go is a good skill to have. And also have the self-awareness that if I had been triggered, if something had shifted for me, if I had been so affected by listening to someone's story, then I need to put in place a means to look after myself, to practice self-care. This can be done in a variety of ways. Meditation is a very, very useful tool, very helpful. Also at Lifeline, there is the opportunity to debrief with supervisors. And if the case is more severe, then a session with a psychologist can be helpful. So I think we've come to the end of the 15 minutes.
Alex, Alex, thank you so much. I was just enjoying the way that you were kind of taking us through your career as and the key learnings that you've had as a counsellor and trainer in Lifeline. And some of the things I was particularly appreciating was, well, the key messages that I took on was this whole lovely aspect of empathy that you talked about, a beautiful, wonderful energy where I want to help another person. I don't think I've ever heard empathy being described that way. So that was a lovely expression. And I could really sense in you that capacity to create a safe space and being totally present for the person, so that you can be very compassionately present. And another thing that I was appreciating, Alex, was this whole aspect of not getting lost in their story. In fact, you actually said, don't listen to the details. But not to get lost in another person's story, but to have your boundaries in place. And I love the way that you acknowledged that, your own energy changes from day to day and adjusting your boundary accordingly. A great tip there in terms of listening. You brought in that really important aspect of confidentiality. I think that's so, one of the key things to any type of listening, but also sacred listening. And when it is really appropriate that you may not retain or maintain that confidentiality, and you're very specific about those particular parts. And then that aspect of not helping or not being helpful. What's not helpful in the listening process, rather, are things like, a judgmental nature, being critical, being directive, finding a solution for the other person, but just to step out of that space and allowing the other person their own space to process and come to understand what it is that they need to do, and when they need to do it. So your talk there was full of a lot of richness, Alex, and I love the way that you were saying at the end too, that ability just to let it go, to really reflect on your own, how you've traveled through a listening process, and if your feelings have changed and how they might have changed, your mood might have changed, and that ability to let go. And I mean, one question that I'm left with is, I'd love you to tell us just a little bit more before we do a meditation about how you've been doing now for 35 years or so, how you feel that has informed and enhanced your ability to really deeply listen and create presence.
Yes, definitely. Having that meditation in my background definitely has helped me to be a little bit kind of removed, I suppose, from the intensity of people's emotions. But at the same time, it has given me the opportunity to come closer to that person to be able to step in, to lean forward whenever that is necessary. Yes, without having that meditation experience in my background, this type of work would be very, very difficult for me.
Yeah. So it would be very difficult in the sense of exposing you to burnout, or is that what you mean, or being able to keep the boundaries solid?
Absolutely, but also having that desire to be helpful, to be there for someone. I think without the meditation, that energy would not be there so much.
It's lovely. Well, look, we're going to do a little meditation now before we engage with Joseph, who is coming at listening from a different perspective. But perhaps we could look at the Anthony Strano meditation commentary, perhaps the stepping inwards one, because I think that might mirror some of the things that you've been saying about starting to see ourselves. You used the word soul, but starting to see ourselves as a soul rather than and a listening soul, a deep listening soul, rather than an identity that we may have developed through social processes and so on, popular culture. Before we kick off with that, could you just explain how to meditate? As people listen to this commentary, what should they do?
Yes, to let go of the physical and enhance that which cannot be seen with these eyes, but that inner energy which contains all the beautiful qualities of our personality. So to focus on that, and yes, to realize that I am that life is more than just this body. That life is a powerful spiritual energy in which the mind and the intellect reside, and the thinking power, to be able to think, dwells inside the spirit. And of course, to recognize the Supreme Spirit and move our thoughts towards Him.
Lovely. Thank you. So we'll have this commentary now. So if you're sitting there at home, just relax if you aren't already relaxed, and allow yourself to just turn within and let the words that are being spoken wash over you, and hold them in your mind and experience what's being said as we go through this meditation together.
I relax my body completely, and gently, very gently, I step into silence. I step inside myself, and in the silence, I disconnect from the things around me. I relax. I am still. And for the next 10 minutes, I will remain inside myself. I will remain in this silence, concentrating and keeping myself disconnected from all the things around me. Taking this journey inward, I wish to know myself. I want to be with myself and not think of anything else. Beyond worry, beyond fears, beyond the noises of the outside, I become still. Gently, I concentrate and I ask myself, who am I? Who am I really? Am I this name, this body, this nationality? Or is there something more to my existence? In the silence, I focus my mind and concentrate on the center of my forehead. And as I focus, I visualize a point of light, a point of eternal energy. I understand. I am this light. I am this point of spiritual energy. I am here. I am the soul, a point of living light, the spiritual being. This is who I am. And as I journey deep, very deep within myself, I remember, I realize that I have great resources, great power within myself. I am a soul, and inside me lies all my experiences, my identity, and all the things I need to make my life happier and more peaceful. Who am I? I am a spiritual being, a point of eternal light. I let these thoughts penetrate my mind. I concentrate on these thoughts completely. I am a soul. I am immortal energy. I am peace. Peace is my original strength. Within myself, I visualize a pool of energy. This energy is the energy of peace. I go deeper and deeper within my peace. I remain in this experience. I remain within this consciousness. My original and deepest quality is of peace. Peace is my original nature. Peace is my original strength. And the deeper I go into myself, the deeper I go into my original peace. I am no longer distracted by all the things outside me. I remain in this consciousness, there is only peace, only silence. Peace and silence.
Alex, thank you so much for sharing your emotional capacity. And I'd like to now check in with Joseph, our second speaker. He's going to take up this aspect of deep listening, not so much professionally, although I'm sure listening has been part of his professional journey, but more from a personal point of view, a personal dimension around listening and what it's meant for him. And Joseph and Alex belong to the same men's group, and Joseph has been meditating since 1990 and has come to really appreciate the value of listening to himself, to the divine, to others, and the world at large. Joseph has a diverse background, and it is very diverse, in community services and construction. So probably quite often think of those as being very different career paths, community services and construction. He's also worked in education, music, retail, theatre, and is currently a handyman. So a huge amount of flexibility there. And listening has contributed to developing a flexible and adaptable mindset. This is what Joseph considers to be really important. That his listening skills has contributed for him to be able to develop a flexible and a very adaptable mindset. And he maintains that being aware of the needs of the present has required listening more deeply to himself, to others, and to the divine, and to the world around him. He considers that when he is in the listening zone, that his capacity to work more effectively with others and contribute to a conducive work environment increases. And of course, meditation is an integral part of being able to listen and respond. So Joseph's going to share with us his story on listening. So welcome, Joseph. Lovely to have you with us. Tell us about your journey of listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you. First, thanks very much, Alex, because I was very much reminded of the short time that I was working, or not working, I was working actually as a volunteer for Lifeline. And I really came to appreciate very much what Alex was saying, how he concisely and thoroughly surmised what makes a really good listener. And I guess, listening is a real art, and I think it's very humbling, I think, to be in the presence of so many components that I suppose enable any person to be present with another person. So thanks very much for that, Alex. I think for me, one of the key words I think is silence. I think the capacity to be silent with myself, I think, also helps me to be silent or be able to be neutral and in the moment with another person. I suppose the starting place of course, yes, is with the self, because if I can't listen to myself, then it becomes, I think, a little bit harder to listen to others. And I'm sure we've all been in situations where you may have witnessed two people having a conversation and both have the need to be listened to, but neither is perhaps as aware that the other person really needs to be listened to and is, they may not just have that capacity at the moment to recognize that I have to shelve my, I guess, my needs for the moment to be able to listen to the other person. And I think that really, when I'm able to do that, then I'm definitely able to have a conversation and communicate to the other person. But I think also it does require that I do work on myself, that as much as possible, I guess, my own needs are met before I'm able to interact with others. Now, of course, in the real world, maybe it doesn't always happen like that, but I think for me, that's where meditation is a wonderful opportunity to deeply listen to myself. And I guess I can do that. For me, silence is integral. It's a very important part, just to be still with the self and to, almost like feel my own pulse, see how I'm traveling, what feelings am I feeling at the moment, whether I'm feeling overwhelmed or whether I'm feeling, quite at ease with myself. And I think when I'm able to be still, I think within myself, then I'm also, that translates, I think, to the capacity to be still with others. And as Alex mentioned, to be in the moment, to be neutral, to be without judgment for another person. But again, I'm the experiment. I'm the person, I'm the soul that has to, I suppose, do the work on the self first in order to be able to listen to others. And of course, there are times when it may be a little bit more challenging. But one of the ways I think that I've come to appreciate how complex the process is. The body, of course, we can listen to the body. Sometimes we may have been to a therapist and they may have said, I just want you to be still and just take a deep breath. And I just want you to see how it feels to be in this body that you're in at the moment. What does it feel like? Can you feel any tension? Is there a certain level of comfort there, or is there some kind of dis-ease, maybe in your neck or your stomach? Whereabouts is that discomfort? And that process of just going within, I think, is it's very useful, because it helps me, or it certainly has helped me, to have my finger on my own pulse, to get a sense of how I'm traveling within myself. Am I carrying lots of stuff, or how aware am I of myself? And of course, the body carries a lot of memories, and it's important, I think, to be aware that we do carry a lot of things within ourselves. So this is, of course, on a deeper level. It's a deep sense of listening to, how I am as a being, what I've carried, what I'm carrying, and perhaps what I would like to maybe let go of. And, this is very much, I think, connected to the whole process of being still, of being well acquainted with the silence, which for me is like a laboratory. It's where I can really gauge where I am. It's a mirror, and it's a very humbling process of, I think, sharpening my sense of being honest with myself. Where am I? And I think, what I've learned working with so many different people is that, people are complex. People have so many wonderful stories. They have so many wonderful things to contribute. And, we all have that capacity. And to appreciate that within myself and to appreciate that in others is a very, very empowering thing. And that, I suppose, it does require that I listen, that I'm tuned, or I know how to listen, because I think listening is an art. It's it requires, just like anything else, practice. There may be times when my emotions might be running away, and my capacity to listen at that moment is quite minimal. So, if I do have a sense that, there's a lot that I need to deal with, then, if I make effort to deal with those things, sometimes it's necessary to see someone who can help me if I don't have the language or the skills to deal with it on my own. Then I'm able to be more present to myself, of course, and to others. And the process, is heightened, of course. Well, I've found definitely through the process of meditation. it also just sort of reminds me, there was a period of my life where I lost my job about 6 times in 6 years. So it was just the industry that I was in wasn't particularly not reliable, but it was quite it was quite unreliable. There were so many things happening, and it was difficult to get a sense of, I suppose, stability in terms of work, And I really, really drew upon the fact that I needed to be present. I needed to be not overwhelmed by what was happening within me, especially when I found out that I'd lost my job, and I needed to get another one because I was in the process of paying off quite a hefty debt. So it really, really helped me to be present and just to recognize. I think part of the listening for me was to recognize what was going on and have the capacity through meditation to just not judge it, but just be aware of it and make time to deal with it, because it's a very important thing that for that my inner well-being and my inner peace, to be able to sit with myself and to feel comfortable with whatever's going on. It's a crucial thing. That's what I've really, really come to appreciate that. And then my capacity to respond is heightened, as opposed to being in the seat where I'm reacting all the time. And of course, it's quite difficult to be in the world, as challenging as it is, when I'm reacting and when I'm at the mercy of my emotions and my feelings. Then it's as though I'm not integrated. So the process of listening is to be deeply, I think, integrated, to acknowledge and to embrace every part of my being, because they are expressions of who I am, the different facets of who I am. So I guess for me, the process of meditation has been a journey into being more fully aware of myself, and then making efforts, to integrate, to acknowledge, and to learn to love all those parts of myself, which perhaps at times I have found difficult to. And I think also, it's like listening creates an antenna. So I can listen to myself, I can listen to others, I can listen to the world at large, because everything happens in a context. Everything happens, nothing happens in an island state. And so in the midst of all the things that may be going on for myself or other people, there are things happening outside of ourselves, which is like another layer. It's as though, when you see an optometrist, there are so many different lenses that we can look at the world through, and in fact listen through as well. So it can be quite complex and quite challenging at times to come to terms with everything that's happening externally as well as internally. And so, I really do appreciate the times in my life where I've really needed to be listened to, because it's had a profound impact. And I think perhaps we've had that experience in our life where maybe we haven't grown up being listened to, and if someone does listen to us, either in a counseling or a psychological space, or we meet somebody who is able to listen to us, it can really, really create an impact. And I think that impact for me was about being acknowledged and being valued. And I think that's what happens when we are children. When we're listened to, we learn to value who we are. We learn to recognize that being in the world, we're going to experience many different emotions, and we start, I think, to feel more at ease. We develop a capacity to deal with how we respond, or maybe how we react to things. And that I think has helped me to, appreciate that. That's what I think one of the elements in that can enable stability to play out in my life, that I can feel comfortable or grow and learn to be comfortable with certain feelings within myself that otherwise might be, set myself against myself, by default. So the art of listening really, really opens up a whole world, a whole realm of, into my inner world. And, my inner world is very rich. It can be very rich. And if I'm able to access it and appreciate it and love it, and therefore integrate it. But otherwise, if I'm not able to, I suppose, listen deeply, or if I am able to listen deeply, but maybe not be able to come to terms with things, then I suppose that requires a different kind of an understanding. But listening definitely is like the doorway into the labyrinth, perhaps, that exists within myself. And so I suppose, yes, having a greater sense of who I am through this process of listening and appreciating and valuing myself, it translates into the capacity to do likewise for other people. So to appreciate the beauty they have and the skills and the talents they have. And, when you're working with a lot of people, then having that attitude and that mindset really, really makes working a lot easier, because of course there are challenges always in life, and probably they won't stop. But my capacity to be with them and to make the best of them, and in fact to thrive with those challenges, I think becomes greater when I'm able to, be still and be silent when it's necessary. And it also definitely informs the words that I speak when I'm coming from a deep space, a silent space, a still space. I might not need to say so much, but my words have a lot more potency when I'm coming from that space. And because we are obviously bombarded with lots and lots of information. So concise and succinct thinking and words, I think, are very much appreciated these days, or very much needed. So I was just had that thought, what is it like for you out there to be listened to deeply? So perhaps we could just do a little bit of an experiment where we just sit nice and comfortably, and we just breathe into, we're in the now, we're just relaxed in this moment, and we're breathing into the very depths of who we are as best as we can. And just taking stock, or just sharpening my awareness on who I am, or who I might think I am. Maybe you can think about a time in your life where you really needed to be listened to, and that was facilitated. You may have had a lot on your mind for quite some time and really needed to express that to somebody. And maybe you were lucky, or you were blessed to have an ear that was willing to hear what was going on for you. If that was the case, maybe just reflect, how did it feel to be deeply listened to? Hopefully it was non-judgmentally. How did it feel to be expressing all the things that perhaps you felt you may not have been able to say to anybody. How did it feel afterwards, after you had been able to share with somebody else, you know, a part of yourself that perhaps you very rarely share? So just breathing into that experience, all those memories, all those recollections. But in the process, you know, maybe that hasn't been your experience. As you breathe into the being that you are right now in this moment, as you allow your awareness to circulate through your whole body, all the way down to the extremities of your toes, to your fingers, fingertips, every part of your body, feet, ankles, shins, knees, thighs, buttocks, stomach, solar plexus, ribs, shoulders, upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, hands, shoulders, throat, and head. Just try and get a sense of what it feels like. We're listening to our body. How's my breath? Do I feel any tension, or do I feel quite relaxed, or perhaps a bit of both? Just get a sense of that, and within that there's always great potential. If things perhaps are a little tight or locked, with some practice, with some focus, we can begin to unlock things within ourselves and open up to the great potential and wealth that we have within us. And have that thought that I am worthy of being listened to. I am valuable. I have many gifts, many riches to share and to learn from. So I'm just cultivating a very, very rich and receptive space to be in, whereby I'm open to all the signals, all the feelings and emotions that are within me that may need to come out. And my value and my worth are unwavering. No matter what I'm feeling, what I'm sensing, what I'm picking up through this body listening, it doesn't make me any less a being. perhaps it generates a deep sense of appreciation for all the things that I have in my life and all the people that are in my life and all the challenges that each of us faces. And deep listening can really help me to appreciate all the nuances and all the challenges that I've overcome and are yet to overcome, knowing that the art of listening is in fact that, an art. It takes time, it takes practice. It takes a deep sense of love and trust in my own process. And it brings me closer to my own intrinsic value. So we can slowly bring ourselves back into this now space. Just carrying with us that sense of ourselves, that capacity we have within us to listen and appreciate and ultimately integrate the many movements and facets of who we are. And so I suppose when we get into the practice of giving ourselves time to listen to our body, to our thoughts, sometimes our thoughts can be racing. I know for myself, even after practicing for quite some time, there are times where I think, wow, my thoughts are still quite independent. But it's very humbling because it tells me that, there's work obviously still to be done. And, there's this connection, of course, between my thoughts and my feelings. So I need to listen to my heart. People say, listen to your heart. What does your heart say? What should I do in a situation? Well, listen to your heart. Of course, we need to listen to both our head and our heart. But, ultimately, it's important to be able to listen to both and then come to some sort of decision if it's the right time to do that. Over time, I found that it's easy to listen, or I feel like I have developed the capacity, as Alex said before, to be detached. And of course, when we're listening to others, we need to be neutral and detached as much as possible in order to be objective. And it's the same for ourselves. I know for myself, I need to be able to sit with what I'm going through and to get to that space where I can be objective as much as possible. So that if I need to make a decision, it's not based on compulsion, or it's not being colored by, lots and lots of emotions that are running around. I need to be in a state of stillness. And the silence, as I said initially at the beginning, it really brings me into that state of neutrality and helps me to be able to move with a certain degree of confidence, knowing that I've been able to deal with things within myself that are part of myself, and embracing them, of course, makes me a lot more rounded and adds to the depth that we all have. We all have that depth, and listening does facilitate that.
Joseph, there's a question that's come in here that I think it would be great to have a response from you on it. Given that you've just sort of taken us on a beautiful journey of that inward travel, you know, to really start to listen deeply to ourselves and acknowledge our feelings and our thought processes as well. And there's something that's come in that I'd like to just put to you and in this particular moment. And they're saying, can you share a time in your life when you were not listened to and the impact it had on you and how you managed that? I guess they're just looking to, and it's connected to your the little kind of commentary that you gave us there, or the exercise, as you called it, to ask us to do. So I thought I'd just pitch that to you now.
Yeah, that's a really good a good question. I mean, I learned, I wasn't, I suppose, I grew up in a kind of an emotionally deprived kind of environment, and so I didn't have that natural capacity to listen to myself. I had to, I mean, I always struggled with my feelings and my emotions. And I had to learn. I mean, I recognized that I didn't really have the skills to deal with that. So many times in my life, I felt like things happened and I kind of felt that something wasn't right, but I felt I wasn't, the words never seemed to come at the right time. And I know that was because I wasn't very fluid in that area. I was kind of disconnected, or I was out of sync. And it wasn't, I mean, I think in the bigger picture, it's no one's fault. You know, we're born into the family that we're meant to be born into. And I think for me, that has been a lesson that I've needed to learn that. So, you know, many times in my life that where I felt kind of like, I think I grew up with the feeling of being alienated. And I understand that was because my feelings were like a separate entity, and the rest of my life they were different. They were separate. You know, they weren't integrated. They weren't connected. So many times in my life, I did feel out of sorts, out of sync. And I think a few things did happen in my life where I recognized, you know, it's like you attract the things that you put out. And I think I was attracting things that I think were at times they were a bit disturbing. So I thought I really need to get to the bottom of this. I need to understand more about myself, what's going on internally, because I wasn't really privy to that, I think, at that time in my life. So over many years, I did see, you know, where it was necessary, and it was quite necessary for a lot of the time, you know, I needed to see professional people to help me create a language, or create, the capacity to be with myself more comfortably, and to acknowledge what I was feeling and be able to sit with it, not project it. I mean, I didn't really have the tendency of projecting things on others. I don't think that strongly, but I've really come to appreciate I really need to be responsible for my feelings and my own life, and you know, have a grasp on what's happening, so that I don't get into the habit of projecting it and, you know, putting it on another person who has nothing to do with what's going on up here or in here. So I can't think of one situation, but there were many actually as I was growing up, you know, and probably a few that were very difficult. And I thought, yes, I need to go and see somebody so that I can start to develop a language and a way of being my own friend.
Yeah. And look, you talked about silence as being like a laboratory to understand your feelings and your thoughts. And I could see so clearly that you've really made it an amazing laboratory there, that you've turned that into your strength, really. And I loved what you were saying too about that when, you know, being listened to impacts deeply, and that it gives you a feeling of being acknowledged and valued. I mean, that's just such a hugely healing process, isn't it, to be listened to?
Definitely.
Validated, acknowledged, valued. Yeah.
I think it's a very, very simple act, but I mean, more than sure that Alex would, second that in his capacity as a counselor. And I know when I was working at Lifeline as a volunteer, for people who have grown up not being listened to, it's amazing what that simple act of giving the energy of my attention to another human being can do. It can really open up and another world and a very, very positive and healing world within.
But also how it enriches yourself, but also others. Like I'm just loving what you're saying about, when we really listen deeply to ourselves and acknowledge that, and whatever that inner space is, it translates into being able to listen to others. There's such a lovely correlation there. Yeah. I've always noted you to be a very good listener, actually, Joseph. So maybe that's part of your big journey of life, isn't it? That and not being listened to as a child, that you're in a position now where you listen very strongly to yourself and you give that active listening to others as well.
Well, I think I try to. I mean, I think what Alex was saying about there are times when it's a lot easier to listen to others. And I think sometimes we can say, look, maybe I'm not able to listen to you at the moment. I know that you really need that. And I'm really sorry that I can't give that to you at the moment. Maybe if I've got a little bit of, if I'm able to, I will. But I think that's being realistic, because otherwise we can become listening machines. And the aim, of course, is not to make others dependent on us. The aim, of course, is to enable that capacity within ourselves so that we can listen to ourselves, and I think that's very important.
Yeah, let's bring Alex back in here, not so much as a counsellor, but just as a listening person. Alex, one of the things that's come in is another question that says, how would breath awareness enhance listening? What do you note happens with your breath when you are in that state of being very present and listening?
Yes, I think I don't know too much about it, but I think it does enhance the relaxing qualities. And when we're in a relaxed state of mind, then our senses become more attuned, more amplified, and we can hear things that perhaps when we're not so relaxed, that we wouldn't have heard otherwise.
Meditation often begins with breath awareness, so doesn't it? It's any kind of inner process. You often really focus on your breath first, or you note, if you're not focusing on it, you note that your breath is slowing down, your breathing's becoming more relaxed, and your thoughts slow down.
Yes, I was very much aware of my breathing just after my heart operation. Having that shortness of breath, I really appreciated to have that capacity to fill oneself with breath. It just makes such a difference. It just when I wasn't able to breathe well, I just felt an emptiness inside, or a neediness for air. Yeah.
It's another question that's come in here, and I'd love a response from both of you on it. And it is about the divine. And Alex, you did mention it, the divine a little bit, and I can't recall if you did, Joseph, but I do know that it's part of your practice anyway. But the question is, how has your connection with God facilitated your ability to listen? And what role does God play in your ability to listen? And then there's a second question, and that is, how do you feel the presence of the divine and know that one's listening to you? It's just really about that other aspect of listening, isn't it? The listening to the self, listening to others, and we've spoken quite a bit about this one, but that aspect of listening to the divine and knowing that you're being listened to by that one, and how you connect to make that happen.
Yeah, so when I sense the presence of the divine, I just feel this kind of a warmth, an empowerment that comes over me. And it also seems like a time when magical things can happen. Very little thing out of the ordinary things become real and true. And for others, I just have that feeling for others that everyone is a child of the divine, and they deserve the respect and the love, all the respect and love that I can give them.
What about you, Alex? How's it played out for you? How do you know that the divine's listening to you when you're in your silence laboratory?
Oh, yeah, Joseph. Yeah.
Sorry,
yes.
Joseph. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you, Joseph, and I'm saying Alex. Sorry about that.
That's all right. No, I think that look, I think they're intrinsically linked, definitely, because in the silence, I think, I think I guess for those of us, who meditate, the divine is such a subtle being, and silence is such a conducive space to getting in contact with myself, but also getting in contact with the divine. And I feel like I'm, able to have that conversation, or, if there are things that are bothering me or things that I'm stuck on, I'm caught up in, then I've really find it useful. It's so simple just to say, look, I just hand this over. I can't, I'm not getting anywhere with it, so it's like inviting the divine into my heart and into my mind through, I suppose, acknowledging at that moment my limitations. But yes, as Alex said, there's that warmth, and I feel like something has shifted on a subtle level when I am able to just let it go. But it has to come from my heart, and I think when that happens, it's a beautiful thing, because it opens up a different kind of vibration, a different energy, and then I know, okay, it's going to be okay. I don't necessarily have to know how it's going to play out, and I don't. But it's kind of gives me a vibrational, a sense of surety, I think, that things will work out.
So some of those key aspects then around listening are things like silence playing a key role, being very present and feeling a presence, and that turning inwards, isn't it? And then it opens up a lot of other beautiful qualities that are there within ourselves: empathy, compassion, that ability to look at what's in there in a completely non-judgmental way, and the great critic not there at all, completely absent, and it allows us to flourish internally, and then of course to share that with others. So an incredible art, isn't it? And historically, men don't have a good track record for listening. Now, this is a question that's come in: is listening a gendered art? And perhaps that's a very deep question in a way, because it's also saying what practices help us to listen better. So I mean, that's a deep question in the sense of understanding the soul to start with, but there is some social forces at play that play out where, some of us get opportunities to do more, and others get opportunities to observe more, or listen more. And that does impact in the way that we perceive ourselves. So, and you are two men who have really developed that art of listening. So was it natural to you? Did you really have to learn it? What practices have you employed, and do you continue to employ to really practice listening and make that, I guess, part of your innate being?
Yeah, so for me, I think I've always been interested in people and wanting to get to know others on a deeper level. Ever since I was a child, I think I was attracted to people who were open to sharing stories about themselves, or stories generally. And so my imagination would just run wild when I was in the presence of someone who was telling a story. And also from a very early age, I've often thought about the mind and the suffering of how the mind, or how the soul suffers, and how best to alleviate that, what to do to make it easier for people to live a reasonably peaceful and happy life. So that's been with me pretty much all my life, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. What about you, Joseph?
I think I grew up very mindful that people maybe weren't listening as well. They weren't kind of communicating. I think being able to communicate listening is integral to communicating. And I think I was really acutely aware that probably because I felt like I wasn't being listened to, I really made it a point to listen to others, because I think I got a lot out of listening to others. I thought there's a lot going on. I came to understand so much by listening to other people that, so sometimes in quiet moments, people might confide in you, and they were giving almost like really rich information about themselves. And that somehow informed my way of interacting with others, thinking that there's always another aspect. We're getting, like the public face, but the private face is providing a lot of rich information, which kind of changes everything in one sense. I need to know more about other human beings in order to be able to interact with them in a more respectful and a loving way. And I think I relate to what Alex was saying. People have got a lot of stories, a lot of richness, but sometimes it may not translate for one reason or the other. But the more I know about somebody, I think, then I'm able to be, I don't know, I can appreciate them a lot more, because, people have been through amazing things. They've struggled on many different levels sometimes. And so each of us is like, so deep. We have this capacity, and I think it helped me just to really appreciate that aspect of humanity, and try and carry it with me into my interactions as much as possible.
Yeah, that's great. Look, we're getting close to having to finish. I've got two questions, and they're kind of more technical sorts of questions, but I want to ask them because our viewers really want a response. One is, there's two, I'll read them both. How can one train as a lifeline counsellor? So that's a fairly technical one, perhaps, Alex, for Alex. And another one is, what sort of professional people did you find the most helpful? And I think that's probably pitched to you, Joseph.
Yeah, so to become a lifeline telephone, they're called crisis supporters these days. They used to be called counsellors a long time ago. But so the best way is to go online, and quite often there is a lot of information about Lifeline online, and the centre that is closest to you would be the best one for you to apply to. Quite often there is an application form online, and you can fill that out. Most centres run training sessions twice a year, usually end of January, early February, and end of June, early July. Centres are open for applications and intake of students, and usually it's about a 4 or 5 month training period. Although these days now they consider training to take up a whole year. Even when people come onto the phones, they're still training for the first 6 months or so. Yeah.
Thanks, Alex.
Good.
Joseph.
Yeah, well, I spent about 16 years in education, so obviously that's a very communicative environment. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot about I suppose dynamics. I think not talking too much. So of course that entails trying to elicit things from students, and yeah, I think that whole arena helped me to sharpen things, but definitely receiving professional counseling and all that really helped me a lot, because I felt really, really listened to, I think, for the first time in my life. Well, not the first time, but it really sort of had a very strong impact on me. So yeah, those counselors and psychologists and so on, of course, you know, there have been people along the way that have really helped as well. So yeah, I mean, a good ear, I think, is people loves people who can listen. I think because it's such a wonderful and needed and valuable thing. I mean, we all do it at different times, you know. But yeah, I think they're the most beneficial or helpful people, I guess.
Yeah. Look, we're close to closing now, so I'm going to thank both of you. Actually, it's huge thanks to both of you for joining us on Youniverse this evening, and for sharing your journey, your career with you, Alex, and your journey, Joseph. You know, that very deep art of listening and listening well, and I very much appreciated your insights and the personal approach that you took to this this whole topic of listening. It's been invaluable. So our thanks, our blessings, and our love to both of you.
And many thanks to you, Gabrielle, for being a lovely facilitator, for listening so beautifully and respectfully. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Gabrielle.
Up to both of you. Sure. Look, viewers, you might like to browse our online bookshop, Eternity Inc., which has a full online range of books on self-empowerment, listening, by the way, and spirituality, always at not-for-profit prices. And if you'd like to subscribe to Open Your Eyes to the Universe to receive monthly updates, then please email us at special.events@au.brahmakumaris.org. And finally, I'd like to tell you about our next episode of Open Your Eyes to the Universe. We'll be joined by Canadian-based Eric Larest, a journalist and a filmmaker, and his topic is inclusion and diversity. Both big words at the moment. They're big words in 2021 and 2022, inclusion and diversity. And Eric joins us on Youniverse on Saturday, the 27th of August at 6 p.m. AEST. We're going to close out tonight's episode of Open Your Eyes to the Universe with a song. Peter will pitch that one, and I understand it's one of Peter's favourites. In fact, he composed and sung it, so see if you can recognise it. And until we see you again in August, may you continue to open your heart to deep, attentive listening. Allow it to nurture your inner voice and allow it to transform your relationships and inspire your spiritual growth and your connection with the divine. Om Shanti.
Walking along the rocks, I could feel the power in the water. There was something about it that sent shivers down my spine. The rocks seemed so beautiful, like giant tiles formed in art. I watched and thought of a dream I'd had, and the ocean danced on. All the time my love grew stronger. I heard your thought from far away. Spoken many times before, I knew it waited for my time to come. We were to work together to transform, All the time my love grew stronger. I heard your I could feel the power in your will. There was something about it that drew me straight to you.